To start things off, I would like to thank Red Cloud Financial Services Senior Vice President of Marketing, Sebastian DeClute, for aggregating some group questions from registrants for me to ask to our panelists. I'll kind of start off here. Sentiment in the silver space has been subdued lately. How are you trying to counter this narrative when talking to investors and telling your story? What would you say to investors right now to get them excited about silver? Maybe let's start with Joe. You're unmuted right now, so.
Well, I guess it's startling to me how much silver is actually going to be required to meet these goals for electric vehicles. It's becoming more and more of a precious metal, but also a significant industrial metal, and that demand is going to continue to grow. I also think that silver usually provides a leverage investment in gold. So I just think, and I think eventually we're going to near a bottom on this market, and I think we're going to see a return to much higher values on silver that we've seen before recently.
Perfect. How about we turn to the other Joe now?
Yeah, well, I agree with what Joe said. I mean, really, gold and silver are great commodities for juniors to be involved with because it doesn't require having a marketing unit to sell the product. From the standpoint of inflation, I mean, it's surprising that gold and silver are not reacting a little bit more vigorously. That may change as maybe the fear of a recession subsides. So, I think we're in a pretty good time for someone that wants to diversify their portfolio into precious metals. We're at rates that a few years ago people were clamoring to have, right? So, I think this is a good opportunity right now.
Okay, great. How about anybody else on the panel have additional sentiment to highlight at this point?
I'd be happy to weigh in. Listen, the volatility is where you make your money. At the end of the day, investing is 90% psychology and 10% execution. It doesn't feel good to sell when things are absolutely running and you're on a tear and things are going. And it feels even worse to buy when things are dropping and you're actually getting a price that you can't believe it. It's just my personal opinion that things can't get much lower. From a silver production cost basis, I mean, we're already, $18, $19. Many things just aren't making money here. It's already fallen at a historic pace, but from April to mid-May, it dropped like 17 out of 19 straight days. That hasn't happened before. You do things when they don't feel comfortable. And right now, I'm looking at silver. It's looking like there are some turns. The tides might be changing from a sentiment point of view. I think it's been the same experience with everyone here, but the vast majority of the price declines across the board recently have been low volume sell-offs. March, April, May, we were trading $20 million of stock a month. June, July, we traded $5 million. This month we're doing more, but we've had a lot of volatility because we announced the financing, and there's a bit of a tree shaking there. I see this as like jumping into a swimming pool with a beach ball at this point. I mean, things are so overpriced, it's just underpriced that it's just a matter of time till they pop back up and go back to a mean sort of value. But it's investing is about doing what's uncomfortable because generally that's the right thing to do. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, great. If nobody else has anything else to jump in on that, we'll move to the next question. Silver is both a monetary and industrial metal. Usage is split about 50-50. We know that that demand for silver is set to increase in the future. Do you believe there's enough primary silver projects in the pipeline to meet demand? Do you think there is enough recognition of silver's importance to that green energy transition that is all the talk right now? if there's anybody who has an opinion or thought on that.
I think that maybe I can just weigh in. I think that one of the things that, we did some looking into the highest grade silver mines in the world, or the biggest silver mines in the world. And, we have this idea that all this silver comes from only silver mines, right? And that there's no byproduct, and that a silver equivalent is like a negative or something, whether it's gold or it's copper, lead, and zinc. But, silver comes with these other commodities. And so I think that finding projects that have silver, push forward, but have other commodity exposure is not a bad thing, because that's generally how the economics play out. You have Blackrock with gold and lead zinc that's going with a lot of the epithermal systems. So I think that the industrial demand, like, it's very clear that EVs and solar panels, and they need this production. And I think finding, a lot of people on the panel right now, you're dealing with high grade projects, right? And so I think that these high grade projects, when you have low prices, those low grade projects go out, and then, the best cure for low prices is low prices, and things kind of push forward. And you're in that environment right now, as Andrew brought up, with the cost basis. So you could see an area where, you have something of a shortfall, and then the high grade projects are the ones that are going to really benefit from that.
Yeah, and I think the statistic behind that is about only 27% of silver is from primary silver mines. The rest is byproduct. So there's a big component there. Okay.
I can perhaps comment on it as well. I mean, as a silver producer, by the way, I mean, our cost structure is a little lower than $18 to $19, just to make that comment. But we've been looking for assets to purchase, to acquire, to merge into, in order to increase our production profile. Many of the assets that we look in, we do not believe will go into production for a very long time, right? So there's also a lot of resources out there that might never see production, right? So it's very difficult. The silver market is indeed very, very thin. There's not a lot of assets out there, neither private nor public. So it's a good place. I mean, for investors, it's if they like the silver space, it's fairly easy because it's not a huge space. But in terms of satisfying the demand, I honestly believe there's plenty of assets out there that will never see production.
Right. And okay. And I mean, obviously, aside from the price, I guess, what are some headwinds that are facing the industry right now, or could be on the horizon, in your view?
The silver junior space, or the silver industry in general?
Well, both. I mean, from a producer standpoint or exploration, either one.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's difficult for some investors perhaps to understand, as we just discussed, what are primary silver producers, what are diversified companies, right? We also don't have just our income stream from silver, and to pick the right ones in terms of cost structure and resource and so on is not an easy exercise for investor to pick that, right? So trading a resource might be a bit simpler. Overall, I mean, everyone is hoping for the markets to turn and silver to take off. We have a very simple philosophy. We need to make, as a producing company, we need to make money regardless of where commodities develop. So we actually appreciate that we're a little bit diversified, right? We have an income from gold, a little bit from zinc, a little bit from lead. But yeah, it's not an easy playground, that's for sure.
Well, many polymetallic deposits, though, have important usage in the EV space as well. Previously, I know at least one fairly large company was involved with a project that had both gold and silver on one part of the massive sulfide and zinc on the other, and they just moved from one side to the other depending on whether the economy was improving or whether there was fear and there were people worried about inflation. That's not really quite the same with the EV market now. You need copper as well as silver at the same time, right? So that's I think an advantage in a polymetallic. You don't have to be a primary silver producer. I think for shareholders to get a great advantage off of a new deposit.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting perspective there. Okay, so if nobody else has anything to add on that, we'll move to the next question. I'll use this to kind of segue into the individual company questions that we've had come in from viewers. But to start off, we have companies in a variety of jurisdictions here. Just maybe a quick comment on the regulatory regimes in each one. In terms of government, how has social license impacted the way you do business? And I'll leave Outcrops over for last and use that to get into recent political change there. But maybe to start off, we'll start with Joe from Equity Metals.
Yeah, well, BC is difficult, but it is a mining district, particularly the Skeena area that we are in. So, there is that advantage in having the regulators understand about mining. There are native issues that we're getting involved with. In early stage exploration. That isn't as large of a program as we start getting a little bit farther along in the discovery stage. So so far, it's a district you can work in. We're not worried about someone taking over ownership of the mine. So we're working with all the stakeholders as much as we can in an exploration stage, and we expect that that's a place that we can put a mine into production.
Perfect. Okay, Matt, how about Newfoundland?
Yeah, I can't say enough about operating in Newfoundland. It's a joy. People are wonderful. I think it was 8th on the Fraser Institute's ranking, for whatever it's worth. And where we are, there's infrastructure, there's power, there's water, there's towns nearby. Government's really supportive. I mean, during PDAC, just go and chat with them all and say, look, this is what we want. This is how we can work together better. And having run companies in not so nice places, it's a real treat to be operating where we are.
Perfect. Okay, maybe we'll bring in Kevin, since he has projects in both those previously mentioned jurisdictions as well as the Yukon. You're just on mute there, Kevin. There.
Newfoundland's a pleasure compared to a few provinces in the West. There's certainly lessons to be learned from a good jurisdiction like Newfoundland, and they like to get business done. They want jobs, and they like mining. Mining has always been good to Newfoundland and Labrador. Now BC, I think they're really working hard. I mean, they've thrown some money at the situation. Frankly, the regulators I've been talking to, they're straightforward. They want to do business. They've got more than a fair load on their plates, and I think that's part of the problem. Really, is a lot of these small regional offices are a little bit overloaded with the files that they have on their plates. Especially in northwestern BC with the Golden Triangle and the amount of activity in that area. That's really tough for that Smithers office. And frankly, I somewhat have a lot of sympathy for the regulators that are trying to work through all of those files and understaffed, under-resourced, and BC is throwing money at it. So let's see what happens. Yukon. Yukon is more challenging than people believe, and frankly, their ratings are far higher than they deserve. There's a lot of issues in Yukon, and the government needs to take things a little bit more seriously. I had a permit, a simple permit for road switchbacks that took 570 days to get. Unbelievable. So I'm happier in BC and Newfoundland. I'd like Yukon to improve. I like Yukon, but we need that government to step up there.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear. Sebastian, let's turn to you.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's interesting. I mean, we have in the last 2 years put 2 mines into production. And we're gonna put the 3rd one into production within 12 to 18 months. The increase from 700 tons to 2,500 is a process that, let's say, the longest let's say the bottleneck, which is the environmental impact study, takes 1.5 years. So you can do many things parallel, but for us in Peru, it is an extremely pragmatic environment, despite its reputation of political perception at the moment. When it comes to mining, it is very mining friendly. In particular, the district where we are, it knows mining for over 400 years, since the colonies. So we're, in that regard, we're extremely fortunate. So we'll see our third mine online within the next 18 months. So that's all I can say, right? Within 3 years, we put 3 mines from permitting into production. I don't think that's possible in BC or other places in Canada. So I don't think it's a fair comparison. But if you're looking for silver companies or for mining companies in general that are in production and cash flowing, whatever, South America and Peru at large is a good place to look.
Perfect. Okay. Andrew, how about you?
Sure. So the vaunted Fraser Institute consistently ranks Nevada as in the top 3 or 4 places in the world. On a yearly basis. I think it went from number 1 last year to number 3 this year. Now, private land in Nevada, patented claims, which we have, is unequivocally the best setup you could possibly have in the entire industry. You get all of the, in the context of the silver world, I mean, nearly 3/4 of all production comes from South and Central America. And those are the areas that got shut down entirely due to COVID for indiscriminate amounts of time. It's why Keith Neumeyer changed First Majestic slogan from 1 country, 1 commodity to 2 countries, 2 commodities, because they were shut down for months and months and multiple mines due to COVID. Not a single mine in Nevada shut down, whether on federal land or private land, for a single day due to COVID. It's an essential business there. Then, of course, you have all of the other, rule of law issues or taxations, etc. But we're in a mining district. Our project's literally in the shadows of some very consequential headframes, and this is a mining county. And it's been a pleasure working there. We've drilled 150,000 meters in barely 2 years. And that's because we've been able to go quickly because we're not having to deal with the federal regulators. Even Nevada even has its own EPA. So, I mean, it doesn't get much better than this. Our Victor target, which was the big, ounce runner in our maiden resource, I mean, that's right behind a Subway sandwich shop and a Comfort Inn and Suites. I mean, so getting drillers and access to people to want to work there is easy. You don't have to move highways or power lines. It's as straightforward as it gets. So yeah, it doesn't get much better than private land in Nevada.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, now turning to Joe at Outcrop, in Colombia, I covered a few companies down there, so I'm interested in hearing about this as well. But we've had a question come in wondering about with the changing government, the new president that's come in, Petro. It has taken a bit of a turn to left. There's been a lot of anti-mining or resource extraction rhetoric during the campaign. What is the company's current view of moving the project forward down there with this change going on?
Well, first jurisdiction is always a matter of risk and reward. And because of the tremendous endowment in Colombia that hasn't been exploited, I mean, it's 30 to 40 years or more behind Chile or Peru. So you're picking up very high quality projects. I would say that, obviously I have no complaints with respect to Petro being elected. I think the previous governments didn't pay enough attention to the actual sharing of the GDP as a towards the countryside. But I also think that Petro signed a compact in April to agree not to nationalize any private companies or assets. He also has lately brought on some more center type advisory people to demonstrate that he's open to other views besides his own. And then I would also say that Petro is first going to concentrate on his major issues, which is the macro climate change issues regarding coal and oil. I think we're way down the list for any impact of actually changing government. Colombia has in the past permitted mines on a regular basis, and I think that Petro also has a populist where if you're in an underground situation, very relatively low footprint because of grade and underground, I think, and with strong local support, I think Petro will also generally support the continuation of projects.
Okay, that's interesting to hear. Okay. So now we'll jump into some questions just for specific companies. So we'll start off for Equity Metals now. Just the question about the unconsolidated silica sand project in Saskatchewan. Do you have neighbors that are mining silica, and is there any work on the property this year? And a comment being China just banned the shipment of silica sand to Taiwan semiconductor industry.
Yeah, that was a project that was, part of New Nadina, and a number of reasons why there were some historic shipments taken from the area there. So there's a quarry in place. We noted that when we looked through the database, when we took over the company, that they were pretty high in silica. There weren't very many contaminants in it. So we started our own sampling process, and we just completed that and put out the news release that that as a result of our study, about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago. Anyway, basically it's a very clean sand, washed Cretaceous age beach sands. Basically, there's a bit of clay in there, and so we've done some washing studies. And from what we understand from talking with the silica market people that we've talked with, is they need a purity of about 98% to basically go through the process of turning that silica dioxide into silicon metal. And there's quite a bit of research being done now on batteries. I don't think we're quite there yet, so we really haven't been pushing that, that project very strongly at this point. There's quite a bit of research being done. The problem with silicon is it will hold a great charge, but the problem is that you'll get a great deal of expansion. So, if you add that to a lithium battery, they're already, fairly dangerous, as far as exploding with some pressure. So, that's being looked at as, potentially adding nano particles and that sort of thing. So, we're watching the market, and that's where we stand right now. We're not really pushing that part for equity. We're really focusing all of our work on the Silver Queen project, with the exception of a little bit of work on the other assets.
Okay, perfect. So we'll turn to Sebastian at Silver X now. Question here: what size of silver production are you envisioning to be considered a mid-tier silver producer? And then I know we just talked about Peru and the environment there a little bit. Just if you have any other comments to make about current politics or anything that you didn't address before, that was the follow-up question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, question number one, what's a mid-tier producer? I want to say that's between 5 and 10 million ounces. I think it will take to produce 5 million ounces a year to, let's say, be relevant, for institutions, for banks, and so on. Until then, I think you play a different game. I think it's an amazing opportunity for investors to get into this point. I think reaching 2.5 million ounces a year will be a huge milestone. But considering where we sit, we have a good chance to grow to 6-7 million ounces easily, right? And then I'm not entirely sure Endeavour Silver produces how much, 7-8 million ounces a year, something in that neighborhood. So it starts to become relevant, right? And that's what matters to us, just to have critical mass, to be big enough to be relevant for a different set of investors. That's what matters. In terms of Peru, obviously I understand that some investors have their concern regarding our administration, right? They have been in power now for a little bit over a year. There has been some turmoil, but of all of the things that have been threatened, nothing happened, right? And we said that when he was elected. We don't believe that much is going to happen. They have not changed a single law in the mining space. So nothing has changed substantially. So we consider it as business as usual. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so now we have a question for Andrew at Blackrock. I am restricted, so I'm just going to read this as it came in, and I'll let you answer it how you like. When are you going to be in commercial production? What will your production rate be?
That's a good question. Frankly, I don't see us being the one to take this into production. What we have is too unique in the context of the silver space. I mean, as I outlined, we're the highest grade story out there at the moment in terms of resource stage, and jurisdiction matters, right? I mean, private land in Nevada, off a highway, walking distance to a town. And by the way, we just stepped out another kilometer, which doubles the footprint of mineralization. We've already got buy-in from First Majestic Silver twice last year into private placements. And what putting out a resource did back in May, you know, I said we took it a lot further than would be expected. I mean, the level of detail our consultants went into is really unseen, at least in recent reports we've looked at in terms of the detail and the rigor and how it looks. And we did that because, we know that, we're being watched heavily. I mean, companies like Pan America, I mean, Fortuna, for example, they just acquired a project in Burkina Faso because they needed to offset jurisdictional risk. Most silver productions in South and Central America, and it's those assets which companies are looking like they might need to offset political risk by coming in and making a play for us. So right now, I mean, we've got 42 million ounces. We think our next resource update will expand that significantly. We found some gaps internal to the resource we just drilled, but obviously we were stepping out pretty much in every direction. So it's still open, but I just don't think we'll be the ones to take it through there, just because there's so few actually true silver projects out there. And from a jurisdictional point of view, I don't see too many companies being M&A candidates, whereas I know that many analysts rate us as amongst the top takeout targets in the sector right now for those very reasons.
Great, thank you. So question for Kevin at CMC, just wondering if you have any plans to list on the OTCQB or equivalent exchange in the States.
You will, that's our next announcement. So we've been working on it, and we're coming to the end of the OTCQB requirements. As far as I know, we've got all our paperwork done, and I'm just hearing the final word from our CFO to make an announcement in the next week or two.
Okay, perfect. So I think we're down to our last question here. We've got one for Sterling. Just with regard to your understanding of the controls on mineralization, you talked about the argillite warps. Are those the main takeaway from the drilling you've done now, and is that going to help you kind of target larger zones of mineralization there?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that the takeaway from last year was more the argillite warps, the ability to see that this high grade mineralization was kind of pulling itself-ish in that area, and then that it repeated. We spent a lot of time this winter. We had structural geos from SRK, PhDs from around the world kind of coming to site and doing a fair bit of work, using machine learning from the gold spot guys. That we had a plethora of experts look at this project to try and narrow it down. When you're dealing with several 2 kilometer long targets, we needed to kind of zone in on it, so to speak, a little bit better than just the warp. So what's been great is that this gap in chargeability showing has lined up with these structural anomalies that came from the SRK team, which lines up with trenching and soils and lines up with that argillite, and it kind of actually fits itself on the top of each of those zones actually. So what we've learned this year is that the focus actually has it kind of this gently plunging kind of dolostone rock, and you're kind of looking for these higher fluid content breccia zones that kind of point the way towards where you're looking for. So the argillite was kind of the first step, and then it's kind of led us to this better understanding, which is where we're pushing our drilling today.
Great, perfect. Okay. So with that, I think we're just about at time here. So I would like to thank everybody for a great discussion.